Well, besides being a shade tree mechanic, like they used to say, I'm also a shade tree painter and artist this time of year. That's my setup's outdoor studio. Works okay. I'm in my home here, obviously, standing in front of one of my favorite paintings that I did, I think, last year. I have the ability to spend the winters in Florida, and I'm in love with the wildlife in that state. I do a lot of fishing and snorkeling and beachcombing and swimming, etc. And I thought I'd paint a picture of the fish that I like to catch and where they kind of hang out under docks and things and pylons like that. So anyway, I'm making a video here of me doing a painting. A lot of my friends think that can't believe I do this, but I do it. It's a gift of God. I didn't realize I could even do this until I retired, maybe 5 years ago. Started doing this type of thing. So I enjoy doing it. It's a blessing. I will show you. I have a website, actually, a Facebook website called Perkiomen Wildlife Art, and it's mostly outdoor art of nature and wildlife in the Perkiomen and French Creek watershed areas where I kind of live and grew up, and then also from Florida. And so I'll show some of the pictures there in this video, but you can go to that website. I've actually been in more than one juried art show. I was in the John James Audubon Wildlife Art Show, which is a fairly prestigious art show, juried art show that you have to be chosen for, and several others. But I don't sell anything. Tried selling them. I thought I would make money, but nobody would buy anything, and I'm okay with that because I just, like everything I make, I give it away as gifts. And more sound like Bob Ross here. Okay, blending in the sky because the sky is always lighter at the bottom than it is at the top. You sit there at the beach and you see that. You see that it is lighter on the horizon, and obviously as you go higher towards higher in the atmosphere, it gets bluer. So you've got to blend that in before I put in my clouds. That takes a while to blend it. We can only try and replicate what God has created because it's the original and it's hard to replicate. Okay, now that I've gotten that blended in there, where the sky is darker at the top and lighter at the bottom, I'm going to put in some clouds. And I didn't cut my horizon across there yet, where the water meets the sky, because I'm going to put the clouds in first. I usually like to work from top to bottom. But I'm going to be like Bob Ross here. Put in some happy clouds. Some happy clouds. But I like making clouds. And clouds usually are lighter at the top, opposite of what we just saw with the sky. They're opposite. They're lighter at the top and they're darker at the bottom because the moisture kind of starts to weigh them down. And it's how we get God supplies us with our rain. I don't know, there's something, joking about Bob Ross, but it used to be so relaxing. I used to watch him as a teenager. But it's just amazing. There was just something so relaxing about just making these clouds. He used to say, it's your place. Make it a happy place. Yeah. Anyway, so you can see, you just kind of randomly make some twirls and swirls, and I'll touch it up later, but this is kind of the general idea. As I said again, you can sit at the beach. I know when I sit there down in Florida and I'm looking at this, I mean, the clouds are constantly changing. You just get enjoyment out of watching the wind change the shapes of clouds. And it's just another beautiful part of God's creation. So I'm going to just keep doing this. Okay, so there you go. I think I'm about done. You know, sometimes you can overdo it and ruin a painting. Ask me how I know. So, yeah, I think that's pretty good. Got my sky, two tones fading from light to dark sky, and my clouds in there. And really, you know, filming makes everything 3 times as long, but it really took me maybe about, oh, half 20 minutes to do that. I'm going to let that dry because oil takes quite a while to dry, particularly when it's warm out. So then I will start with my ocean and put the horizon in and start making the ocean. Is by far the easiest part, is making sky and clouds, because there's really no wrong way. I mean, clouds can look like anything. Okay, so I started to put in the horizon, and it's darker at the top of the horizon, just like I mentioned before, and lighter as you go down towards the shore. Now I'm holding it this way because when I put it down as I'm painting, you can see the sun gets on there. It doesn't distract me, but it makes it hard for you to see. But when I finish this ocean, then I'll show it to you. Okay, it's a little hard. Okay, it's a little hard with the sun glare there, but you can see it's just a matter of blending. I've got two different colors of blue here, and I'm just blending them in. Again, just like I blended the sky. Yeah, it's relaxing, and you just kind of always love that pool water color out at the ocean. You know, you don't see that at the Jersey Shore. You got to go down south to get that kind of color. Okay, so we're inside today because it's been raining outside, and it's kind of hot in here still, but can't paint in the rain under a tree. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish up putting in the foam from the waves at the surf, and I'll zoom in here and you'll be able to see what I'm doing. So I'm going to get a little bit of white, mix it with a little bit of blue, just a hair, actually a little more white, and looking at the camera trying to do this. Okay, if you can see. So I'm just painting in more swirls. We would call this the foam of the surf. Kind of does look something like, you know, it's similar to like doing clouds, really. Um, and you know, if you've been to the beach, you know what this area of the foam looks like. This is the area you'd be surprised where, again, since I like to do fishing, and I like to fish and always talk about that a little bit. So it's amazing how you can catch fish right in this white surf area where the foam is. Seems like there wouldn't be any fish in there, but it's not true. Particularly, I've probably caught the biggest, and I'm talking about 24, 30-inch fish in less than a foot of water. You'd be surprised sometimes how they're right there, right where it's like ankle deep, because that's where a lot of the food is that they're eating. The sand fleas, the small bait fish that they trap up in that area, they kind of move them in, you know, kind of beach them almost. That's why a lot of times you see shark and that sometimes get beach themselves because they got in a little too far and they kind of ran out of water. So that's really what's happening here. Okay, so I moved the camera. Hopefully you can see a little better, although it's kind of sideways, but it's not easy to do this. Maybe if I put a GoPro on my head, but I don't like the way those kind of distorts things. But you can see, just like making the waves, just like making the clouds, it's kind of just random. You kind of just depend on where you're used to seeing. You know, we've all been at the, well, I imagine most of us have all been at the beach and standing on the shore there, and we can see how the foam part just kind of does that, just kind of trickles in and makes the swirls. of foam. Kind of get the idea. And random. And again, I'm not looking at any picture. I'm just doing this out of memory. I'm not, not copying anything. Like I said, I do look at pictures online to get maybe some ideas, particularly when it comes to animals, to get them exactly as close to right as I can. Like I said, this is God's creation. He was the artist who made all of this. We just try our best to replicate it. I know I'm beating a dead horse when I say that, but I'm telling you, I'm really amazed that I can do this as well as I can and it's a gift, as I've mentioned before. I can't do this on my own. I'm just amazed at how it comes out. As many times I'm doing this, and I'm thinking, my God, how did I do that? I don't even know how I made that. It's supernatural. You would call it. It's just Holy Spirit inspired when you have a gift. As I've said on previous videos, everybody has gifts. Depending what they are, academic, intellectual, sports, music, art, etc. It's a gift. Every good gift and every perfect gift comes from above. From the Father of lights, from whom there is no variableness, neither shadow of turning, the word says. And some people say, well, I just got to be good looking. Well, I had to scrap that one. So thank God he's given me gifts. Anyway, well, I think I'm kind of wrapping this up, these lines, because what I'm going to put in this area right here, what inspired me really to even make this painting is standing there one day and seeing the sandpipers and plovers just flying across in a flock. And they're just so cool to watch as they just kind of land on the beach, and they fly in formation and they fly in flocks, and they have a leader. And the pelicans are great ones for that. They stay in a tight formation and just cruise, sometimes 1 foot above the water, way out, about a foot above the water, just cruise along there in a V formation. And one front one moves, the other ones move, and they go in a wave, and they're just disciplined to stay in formation. There's a lesson in that, following a leader and submitting to how they lead. And I kind of messed around too. I think I kind of finished this area, but messed around with out here. Sometimes when you stand there and it's very sunny, you'll see way out on even close to the horizon, the reflection of the sun. The water will sparkle white because there's some small waves that are way out there in the surf, further out. And the sun just sparkles on them. And again, you don't want to overdo it, which I've done in the past, so I'm being careful here. I can always paint over, you can always paint over mistakes to a degree. So you've got to be a little bit careful not to overdo some things, because you get carried away and you're having fun, and before you know it, you ruin the whole thing. So just subtle, just some subtle hints of reflections out on the water. I think it just adds a little more interest. I'm tempted to paint a spinner shark out there. Usually around February, the blacktip and spinner sharks migrate, and once in a while you'll see them jump out of the water and twist and spin. It's really a spectacular sight. Makes you a little unnerving that you'd want to be in the water. They're only about 5-6 foot long, but still, they're a shark. So I've caught a few sharks. They're just more annoying than anything else. They kind of tear up your line or cut your line unless you have a steel leader, etc. You say, Jerry, you're talking an awful lot about fishing. Why don't you have a fishing channel? Well, in order to do that, you have to actually catch a lot of fish. I've got a friend down there in Florida from the UK who's probably laughing right now saying, yeah, you kind of have to catch fish, Jerry. Well, I catch enough. I catch enough to beat him, and that's all that gives me satisfaction. So if he's watching, which I hope he is. There you go, Raj. Okay, so I'm going to call that good. Again, I could play around with it more. That took me, oh, I don't know, maybe half an hour playing around here. Can spend more time on it again, like I said, and sometimes you just mess it up. Well, you can paint over the whole canvas if you want to. It's kind of like erasing the whole thing, but I don't want to waste that amount of time. So next thing I'm going to do is paint in the sand and then start putting the birds in there. But it needs a lot of drying time here for a few days probably with this hot, humid weather we have. Okay, so being the impatient guy that I am, I thought, well, I don't feel like waiting that many days here. I'm going to put in some sand. Now, if you can see where I'm mixing here, see if I can get a good shot of that. Putting in some yellow ochre and mixing it with white to create sand. So let's see how that goes. It's usually a little lighter than you think, so you have to use a little more white. So white is a color that just gets absorbed, as I mentioned before. So let's do it like this. And sand is just not all one color either. You see it. And it's got highlights and shadows, etc. But this area, I'm not going to put a lot of detail in it. So I'm just putting down the color. And I can tell that I'm going to have to whiten this up. It's just a little too dark. It's kind of just like painting your walls. If you have any painting in your house, it never seems to be the same once you put it on the wall and it's dry. So, this type of painting, artistic painting, is kind of the same. So can tell I'm going to have to blend in some more white at a later point, which is okay. So again, if I was more patient, I could have waited a little bit longer. But, you kind of get the general idea. So there we go. That's pretty much done. I'm not going to do anything else. Might put some shells or things in there. Real just dots. But anyway, sand is finished. So next come just birds. Okay, so the inspiration for doing this was standing at the beach one day and watching a flock of sandpipers and plovers fly by. So I wanted to put them in. So I'm looking at that just for the colors because I've got a lot of browns here, different kinds. Matching the colors is one of the biggest challenges. So I penciled and drew in some of the birds. You can see there, just slightly penciled them in. Hopefully you can see. I think I've got about a half dozen there. And so I'm going to start painting them in. I'm not going to leave the camera on the whole time because this video will be like an hour long. So I'll paint some in and then take a picture. Okay, so those three that I painted in there, I've got about 3 or 4 more to go. I was using the burnt sienna mixed with some white, and getting the color is probably the biggest challenge. But anyway, getting there. Well, there we go. I couldn't film the entire time I was painting all these things in. It just takes too long. So starting at the top there's the feeding frenzy. The fish there out in the ocean. The gulls are coming in, picking up the pieces like they do. Plovers are flying by, and that's what inspired this painting, really, when I was standing there one day. And got some shells there, signed my name on it. And I had to get this little Portuguese man of war. You walk the beaches there, and sometimes you see a lot of them. And they're in the water, and they sting, and they can be bad. And you don't want to get stung by one of those. So there it is.